Welcome to the Executive Insights podcast, brought to you by AWS. I'm Clark Rogers, Director of Enterprise Strategy. Today's guest is Adam Marré from Arctic Wolf. Please join our discussion around recruiting security talent from non-traditional backgrounds, agentic AI security controls, and framing security in the language of business. Please enjoy. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's great to be here.
Please introduce yourself so the audience knows all about you and your role at Arctic Wolf.
My name is Adam Marré. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Arctic Wolf. And, I am actually a CISO, so I'm not a field CISO or evangelist. Sometimes because Arctic Wolf is a security company, people think that I spend my time doing that, but actually I spend my time protecting the company. So I own all aspects of security, including physical security for the company. So that's what I do.
That's fantastic. I've been really looking forward to this interview because you have such an interesting background and lots of transitions through it. So your career started off in the U.S. Army, and you're listed as a former Arabic speaker. I'm sure you still retain some of that. But then your very next role was at Disney Interactive. Can you tell me a little bit how that transition happened? And of course, we know what happens after that, but really want to hear about that stark transition from the U.S. Army to Disney, of all places.
I actually went, I was finishing up college late 90s, early 2000s, and back then there were no video game design degrees. It just wasn't a thing that existed. So at the university I was at, I was able to cobble together a degree that, made me competitive for that. And I actually got a job right out of college making video games at a studio in Salt Lake City. And you would have thought that, got my dream job, I've got it made. But then 9/11 happened. And that changed everything for me. And so, decided to join the U.S. Army and did so as a counterintelligence agent. And so I served my time there. And then when I was getting out, I actually went back to the same studio and they got bought by Disney literally the next day.
But then another transition happened. You left video game designing to join the Federal Bureau of Investigation. What prompted that, and what did you do there?
Well, after my time in the military, and I'd gotten to know some guys in the Bureau in that time, it just seemed like a really good fit. But the application process is really long. And so I was able to work in the video game design job and just see if the FBI happened. And it was ups and downs. I thought for a while maybe I wasn't going to get the job, but then they did offer me a position, so I took it. It's just the application process took almost 2 years.
If you had a primary function in the FBI, what did you focus on? Was it cybersecurity? Was it investigations or other types of criminal investigations, or what was it?
So I did do a smattering of lots of different types of cases, from gangs to art theft to kidnappings. I mean, you name it. But my primary function was cyber. And especially when they figured out I had a technical background, which at the time was like, oh, you know what a mouse and keyboard are? Then you are a cyber special agent. And they gave me tons of training. And that's actually where I got, my cybersecurity background was from the incredible training that the FBI offers. Some of that's done through SANS, but some of it's the Bureau's own. Like I became a forensic examiner, and that was training I got straight from the Bureau.
That's fantastic to hear. So you eventually left the FBI and went back to the private sector. What was the transition like going from the FBI, where I assume you had access to all sorts of things from a cybersecurity perspective that I know lots of CISOs today would love to have, and not have access to that in the corporate world? In
the FBI, your main job is to catch the bad guys, right? Like go after the threat actors. Yes, you're there to help companies. Yes, you're there to help them recover. And there's lots of resources you can bring to bear to do that. But the main job is you're trying to deter these kinds of things from happening. And that primarily happens from, figuring out who did it, getting attribution, and then going after them if you can. If it's criminal, arresting them. If it's national security, there's other tools that we can use.
For sure.
And you're going from that mindset, basically like I protect every company, like the whole country, right? Or, wherever your squad happens to be. You go from that to protecting one company. But now you have to protect all aspects of it. And you don't care as much about the threat actors typically. You just want to protect the organization and, prevent people if you can, but detect and respond, you must do, protect the organization. And it was a pretty big mindset shift, and I was ready for that. The second big thing is really understanding that this fits in the context of a business. A business exists to be a business, or an organization, a nonprofit, whatever it is. And so you have to understand that mission statement and then create the right risk appetite and then focus the program to that level. And that's a pretty big transition because you have the luxury when you're an agent and you come into these investigations and you're like, you should do all the security things. What are you doing? But then when you get there and you realize like, oh, I don't have money to spend on everything, you have to be very surgical about what you do. And so those two were big transitions.
I love that. So at Arctic Wolf, how do you have those conversations with leadership? Maybe you want to make a particular security investment. How do you have that conversation without being too jargony and making sure you're speaking their language?
And you got to bring those cultural tools to bear. You got to look and understand, okay, what is the language of this organization or even just this executive team or this board? How do they want to receive the information, but also how can I train and teach them to receive the information? And we use the language of risk, right? So we come and we talk about the risk. Sometimes we'll translate that risk into, a financial cost if we're talking about a breach. Sometimes we'll just talk about likelihood and we're really focused on that. But it all circles around this idea of risk. And then we bring that risk appetite conversation into it where we say like, how much, money are we willing to risk? How much reputational damage are we willing to risk for this? And I love to use storytelling to do that. In fact, at the end, when we're making decisions, especially if it's a decision to accept a risk, like we're going to run this risk and not spend the money to mitigate it, I like to have a story at the end. And it might just be something simple like, so I want to look around the room and everybody is okay if X, Y, and Z happens. Like if, someone was able to, pop someone's account and then they get that information and they post it on the dark web and it comes back that we didn't do this, everyone is okay with us not making that decision. And we know how likely that is. And, just doing that gut check at the end with a story is really useful to, actualize that risk in people's minds. But that is a really important job of the CISO or any high-level security leader to be that sort of application layer to translate the jargony security stuff into something that those people can understand. And even at a security company, you have to do it. You have to do that translation.
You have to speak the language of business or whatever resonates with folks. You called out risk, and the opposite of risk is opportunity, right? So in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of opportunity around generative AI tools, et cetera. How do you balance in your CISO role the ability to innovate, take advantage of some of these AI tools internally for business functions versus the risk that they may bring?
Yeah, it's a really difficult question when it comes to generative AI and all the AI tools that are coming out because it's such a new field. Luckily, though, we've been through this a couple times in the security world. I mean, you can think back to like the 90s when websites came out and all of a sudden there were, these new attacks that we'd never heard of, like cross-site scripting or server-side request forgeries, stuff that didn't exist before. They didn't have a name and someone, invented this thing. And we can think of that and apply that to AI. Like we know this is going to happen. Like there's going to be attacks that we haven't anticipated that very clever people are going to figure out. However, we've gotten a lot smarter. So we're really good at anticipating that. Sometimes, however, though, those risk voices can get really loud and you can get paralyzed into not wanting to take advantage of the opportunity because of the potential risks that might be there. So one thing we found it's useful to do is really stop, take a breath, really look at what's happening, try to analyze it as best you can, really analyze the risk, quantify that risk, and then decide what action you're going to take. So it's really pausing and making sure you're not just slamming the door on something. Sometimes you might need to, and some companies made that decision, and that was probably right for them. But others just put guidance around it. And then as new tools came out, figuring out new ways to do it. And then when people realize the value, maybe you could do something like host the model internally and not have your folks have to reach out to external models and create accounts externally, but now they can do it internally. And so many companies have chosen to go that route because now you control those pathways of data a lot better than something going outside. So it's really that understanding that. And then also now, it was pretty quick where we had an OWASP top 10 for LLMs, which was great. So we have frameworks being designed for this. And then, of course, Amazon or AWS Bedrock, which also helps you host that LLM and then build guardrails that are built in. And then you're also doing identity and access management to it. So making sure, so we're wrapping the things we already know how to do around it. It took us a little while to get there, but not that long if you think about it. So that's what we look at, hosting your own model, making sure you're doing good, proper security controls on that, pen testing it.
Yep.
Against that OWASP top 10.
Just like any other piece of software, right?
Just like any other piece of software. Then making sure you have visibility to the LLMs your folks are reaching out to outside the organization and make sure that's happening in a way that, you have data privacy protections on it. They're doing the right thing. Like we rolled out a training a few months after ChatGPT came out to train our whole organization on how they should be using these things. But then there's the third piece, and that's where your vendors, this is more of a third-party risk situation.
Mm-hmm.
Your vendors are turning on AI features.
Right.
Are you aware that they're turning them on? Are you aware where your data is going, how they're handling it? So that's a third conversation you have to have. So you have to look at all three of those aspects to really understand how to secure the AI.
One thing I didn't hear you say in that answer was, no, we're not going to use AI, right? It's security enabling the business to do what it needs to do with the appropriate controls in place.
Absolutely. Now, I do think culturally, worldwide, we need to be careful about how we're using these things. You can think back to social media and how we just sort of ran, like as a global society, we just ran fully into social media. And now we're seeing some of the mental health issues and other issues that are coming out of it. I think that is more where I'm like saying we need to be careful. We might need to slow down. But as far as rolling out the technology and protecting it, I think that's something that we have a pretty good grip on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's going to be unknown unknowns. And that's why it always has to be defense in depth, right?
Right.
So again, protecting that and preventing bad things from happening is great, but detection and response are a must. So you got to wrap that detection and response around that to make sure you have that defense in depth and you can take advantage of the opportunities without being paralyzed with fear and the risk and not miss an opportunity that you could have had using AI to help, make your business more efficient.
How are your security teams using generative AI today?
At Arctic Wolf, we have almost, I think, 1,000 security operators now that serve our customers. And we have rolled out something for them to use as operators to make them more efficient. And so what it does is it helps them basically conduct the investigations that they would do way faster. Develop queries, know where to pivot, can even help them pivot on that information to figure out what happened faster. But we're not taking the human out of the loop. We're just supercharging the human, which that's sort of the bread and butter we were based on. And so that's what our security operations are doing. We're using that AI to help enhance what the security operators can do. Now, as we move forward, we're probably going to go into the agentic realm and start to have agents that can go do a lot more of that. But still, at the end of the day, where human judgment is needed, where decisions need to be made, we're going to have those humans in the loop to help make those decisions.
How did you have those initial conversations with those humans? That there's a fear out there for some that AI is going to take my job, right? How did you have that conversation to reassure them that it's not going to take your job, but it's going to make you more effective and make you better?
I have a small internal security operations team, and I'm also a customer of Arctic Wolf, so I have those 1,000 operators as well. So I have both. And, I've built up trust with my team that I sat them down and said, look, we're growing. There's more opportunity here. This might mean we don't hire as many people, but no one here is in jeopardy. And we're just going to use this to make us more efficient. And the same conversation happened at scale with all the other operators. Like the benefit of growing so fast is they can see that it's true. I mean, we could barely keep up with hiring. And so when they hear like, we're going to bring something in to make you more efficient, they're just like, thank you. Like, yes, this is great. This isn't going to jeopardize my job. It's going to help me be more efficient. The other thing I've said is, hey, learn this stuff well and be along for the ride, and you're in a great spot. Like where you are right now, you're in a great spot. It's harder for the folks coming out of high school and college to tell them where to go because, like, who knows where the puck is going, right? But I think for those operators that we had, exactly like you said, good, honest conversations about it.
I think it's a brilliant way to do it. Staying with the human element, what kind of programs or mentorships do you have internally at Arctic Wolf, or maybe you do it outside of Arctic Wolf as well, where you're giving a path forward to that junior security operator to come up through the ranks who wants to aspire to be a CISO or a senior security leader? What kind of things are you doing?
We have a lot of operators that service our customers, and we got to find that talent. And we also have to train them on our own tools and the way we do things. And so we have a lot of entry-level positions that we offer. We have mid-level positions too that we bring people in, and senior-level positions we bring people into all the time, experts who want to come work with us. But we do have a lot of intern, analyst, and junior engineer positions that we bring people into. And then we like to find different ways to bring them in, as long as they show an aptitude and a desire. And desire is probably the most important piece, right? An enthusiasm for security. We give a lot of these people a shot. And so there's people from all walks of life, security guards, former teachers, and things like that come to our organization, and we help train up and get to the right levels. And then you can see them rise up in the company and become very, very good security operators. One program in particular that I want to highlight is one called Tech Moms. So we partnered with an organization there called Tech Moms that's involved in getting, primarily women who have been homemakers and been raising the kids, and they want to get back into the workforce. Either their kids are raised or now they're in school, or their life situation's changed and now they want to get back into the field and they're interested in tech. And so we helped work with them to say, here's a path to going into security if you're interested in that. And, we had some presentations with them and we immediately got some applicants, and we've even been able to hire them. And so now we got these moms, right, in our security operations center. And that's not typically what people think of with security operators, but it's great because their life experience, everything they do, brings a different culture and a different feeling to what they do. And then, we can train them up through our organization. In my whole career, starting from counterintelligence to being an FBI agent and now working in security in the private sector, I have found that diverse teams come up with better ideas and handle situations better than homogenous teams. And that's diversity of all kinds.
For sure.
It can be gender, it can be socioeconomic background, it can be cultural background, age, all kinds of things. If you have diverse teams, it actually makes us better at security operations if we have those different viewpoints.
Because your threat actors are of diverse backgrounds as well, right?
They are. And also
thinking differently. And
exactly. And you can come at problems from different ways. And people think about problems differently. And they might have had an experience with a technology that no one else has. And it just helps to have those different viewpoints.
You've been in the cybersecurity profession for quite some time. You've seen a lot in both your public and private sector service. Where do you think we're going to be 18 to 24 months from now? We have, the rise more recently of agentic AI, model context protocols, things like that. Where do you think we're going to be, both from a security perspective and a technology perspective?
AI is going to change things, right? We are going to see that really take off. Now, I actually thought it was going to take off a little bit more in social engineering, faster than it has. We have over 10,000 customers, and we have an incident response practice. And so we get to see, basically, if there's an attack out there, we'll see it. And many we see for the first time, and we see what are successful breaches. And because of that, we have a pretty good view on, what's happened. And we've only seen about 15 to 20% that we estimate of social engineering campaigns really using AI to help bolster them. And I thought we were going to see more of that. But I am going to call out, I do think we're going to see more of that, especially as agentic AI becomes something more commoditized that more people can use more easily, kind of like ChatGPT. And you can imagine when you can take an agent and you can have it go do the research for, create, and execute a social engineering campaign, and then you can just unleash that on the world, what that's going to do. Also, you could do that just for general exploits. We're also seeing a huge increase in the number of CVEs that are posted, to the tune of 20, 30% year over year, which we haven't seen that kind of increase in a while. One of the reasons for that may be folks, attackers leveraging AI to find vulnerabilities. So I think we're going to see that. And again, if you think about, I can throw an agent, it will go find a vulnerability, it will create an exploit for that vulnerability, execute the exploit, and then just give me the access. So these are things I think we could see in the next, 18 to 24 months. I also think and hope that we see us using the same kind of agents to help protect, right? Yeah. And I could think of, if I could have that same kind of agent finding vulnerabilities, I could just unleash it on my tech stack and have it find vulnerabilities and then help me fix them quickly, right?
For sure.
So these are things I think we're going to see. We'll also see that agentic AI in security operations like we talked about earlier. So I think there's a lot to happen there. Another thing I want to see, and I'm hoping that we wrap our arms around a little bit better as a security community, is third-party risk, because it's a really big problem right now. Mm-hmm. We've got to give one another the ability to secure this better. And it's something that I think I hope we really look at, the supply chain risk in general, and just really start to understand it better and start to share information, open up API, open up logging to one another, open up our architecture, software bill of materials, SBOMs. This is something we really need to grapple with, so I hope that we do. I don't know if I'm making a prediction that we will. I'm voicing a hope that it's something that we need to wrap our arms around, because we saw a twofold increase in third-party involved breaches in the last year. And I think that's only going to increase. So we've got to be able to wrap our arms around it and do better.
In closing, anything you'd like to share with your fellow CISOs and or security practitioners?
Well, I guess the biggest thing I would like to say, if you're going to ask me that question, is just keep hope alive, right? We have a really difficult job. And one thing that's been great that I've seen in the CISO community is we've had lots of CISO communities popping up in all kinds of places. We have a great community in Utah where I live, but of course there's works like Slack workspaces and other places, Discord channels, where CISOs get together and share their stories and commiserate. And I just think we have to keep on keeping on. We've got to keep trying to spread the message and get people to take security seriously. Put it on par with shipping new features or doing other things. Really take security first, so that we can kind of move beyond this and confidently move forward with these new technologies and not be focused on trying to do this after the fact, right? And make people more confident in software, in using these solutions. And so just keep doing what you're doing. Let's get the next generation up. Let's lift those below us, but let's stay strong and not lose heart in the face of all the things that are happening.
So you mentioned CISO communities.
Yes.
You recently participated in an AWS CISO circle with peers from your industry. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I've been to a number of these now, and they're extremely useful. It's a lot of us CISOs from security companies in particular. So that's kind of a different breed. So it's really great to be with those folks. And then we just sit around, we'll bring up a topic, and it's amazing to hear the stories, the wisdom. I mean, I always am jotting down ideas on things to do. I'll give you a specific example. One issue that we are dealing with, all over the states, companies of all types are dealing with people interviewing for jobs who aren't who they say they are.
Right.
And in the scarier cases, it might be somebody from a foreign adversarial nation wanting to be an IT worker, or it might just be somebody working multiple jobs or something like that, which is less serious but also still a concern. And we were sharing just some like low tech ideas on how you can try to make sure the person is who they say they are. And one idea was someone like just have them point their camera at an outlet in the wall so you can see what it looks like. If they're in the States,
right.
And it looks like something from another country,
Right.
And there was just a few ideas like that shared. So there's great, like immediately actionable things like that. But then also it's like this breath of fresh air because everybody's dealing with the same problem I have. And I don't feel like I'm alone in it. With the Chatham House rules where, nothing's going to, escape there and you can talk freely, people really are sharing. And so you hear those war stories or you hear their struggles. And you immediately see, like, I feel seen, I feel heard, these are my people, I get it. But then you can also say, how are we going to solve this? What are we going to do? And, I think we like to make sure that we have actionable ideas at the end, and it's really useful. And we covered a couple topics in that one. We covered that, and we covered some incident response. But I have just found those to be extremely valuable for those reasons. Fantastic.
And I imagine you bring elements of your background to them so people learn from you as well as you're learning from others.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all do that. In fact, it was amazing. There were actually quite a few people from the military in that CISO circle. And so we were actually joking about that and talking about it in that one. So yes, we all bring our diverse backgrounds to it and can share our individual viewpoints.
That's great. Adam, thanks so much for joining me today.
Really, thank you so much for having me. This is great.